Which team will win Super Bowl 59? Welcome, football fans, to your official BLV NFL playoff predictions for 2025. These are my bracket predictions, pick by pick, game by game, providing my thoughts on each matchup. The AFC, the NFC, crowning a NFC champ, an AFC champ, and ultimately the winner of the Super Bowl. If that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button, and don't forget to comment your Super Bowl champ and let me know your playoff predictions in the comments section below. I love to hear from you guys and your opinion on who you're riding with to win Super Bowl 59. And if you want to be extra special, leave your Super Bowl MVP in the comments as well. And don't forget, don't be a jabroni. Subscribe to the channel for more NFL playoff analysis just like this. Let's kick it off with the AFC playoffs. Yeah, we're getting right into it. All right, let's begin with the AFC playoffs. And the way that I look at the AFC this year is it's kind of a three-team race, in my opinion. There's the Chiefs as the 1 seed, the Bills as the 2 seed, and the Ravens as the 3 seed. And there's a clear tier divide. For the other teams to make a run and win the Super Bowl, I would genuinely be shocked. They would have to have a revelation during the playoffs. Something wild would have to take place. I definitely foresee one of the top 3 seeds in the AFC coming through and being crowned AFC champs. So let's go matchup by matchup and determine which team I think will win the conference. Let's begin with the first game, which is the number 2 seed Buffalo Bills hosting the number 7 seed Denver Broncos. The Broncos were one of the best stories of the NFL season. Bo Nix, rookie quarterback. Sean Payton with a redemption arc. Sean Payton, low-key, coach of the year candidate. Big-time season for him. He made Bo Nix look like Oregon Bo Nix for a good portion of this season. I think the offensive line in Denver is definitely top-notch, and the defense has been one of the best in the NFL, actually ranking number 1 in EPA defensively. So this will not be an easy game for the Bills. You could argue that the Broncos have the better defense and the better coach on top of a team that did beat the Bills last season, if I'm not mistaken. So the Broncos have experience, at least most of the roster, not Bo Nix, but most of the roster of walking into Buffalo and beating Josh Allen, which will give them some inherent confidence. That being said, it's hard to imagine that the Bills would lose this game and lose the first playoff game that they play, especially at home, with the Bills Mafia, that crowd, the potential weather, and the stakes of this postseason that the Bills carry. This is a team that needs to make something happen this year, and I think that urgency will come out in their play in this game. I could see it being close, with Sean Payton having a good game plan offensively to possess the football and create some big plays through the screen game and play action pass for Bo Nix. The Broncos will have to run the ball in this game, which has not really been one of their strengths, and that's where I could kind of see their offense getting derailed if they have to focus their attack on a rookie quarterback on the road in one of the most hostile environments in the NFL in potential weather, right? That's always difficult. Rookie quarterbacks tend to struggle and tend to lose their first game in the playoffs. It's just historically what happens. On the other side, Josh Allen is historically one of the best quarterbacks in the playoffs. And it doesn't really matter which defense he is playing. He is going to be able to buy time, ad-lib, and create plays down the field. Even if the Broncos think they can match up with those wide receivers, I think the Bills running backs, tight ends could definitely have mismatches against these Bronco linebackers. And I think that Josh Allen will find a rhythm in the screen game, as well as the odd explosion from his arm and his legs by buying extra time. Nobody is better at not getting sacked and avoiding negative plays this year than Josh Allen. And I think a guy like Amari Cooper may be shadowed by Pat Surtain, but he has so many other options. Khalil Shakir in the slot, Coleman on the outside, even Mac Hollins, but then Kincaid, Ty Johnson, James Cook are all going to be great matchups for the Bills in this game, and even their run game could find some success. So I think the Bills may struggle a little bit early, but I think ultimately they explode and they bury the Broncos on Wildcard weekend. The next matchup is the Pittsburgh Steelers at the number 6 seed at the Baltimore Ravens. Now, this one is really interesting because this is a divisional matchup that has a lot, and I mean a lot, of familiarity. This is the black and blue Steeler-Raven matchup. This is the old school beat you up rivalry in the NFL and in the AFC North. This is Harbaugh, this is Tomlin, and typically these teams play extremely close. The Ravens may not have Zay Flowers in this game, which could come back to haunt them. But what they do have is they have Lamar playing the best football of his career. They have the home field advantage. They have the king, Derrick Henry, in the backfield. And they have a defense that's playing their best at the right time. Meanwhile, the Pittsburgh Steelers are playing their worst football at the worst time possible. 4 straight losses, including recently to the Bengals, the most embarrassing of the bunch at home. Russell Wilson has been struggling, taking far too many sacks. The O-line can't block anybody, and George Pickens looks like he's drinking and consuming too much booze while he's on the field. That's really how he's playing right now. Defensively, you can attack the Steelers secondary, but like I said, this might be an awkward matchup for the Raven offense. A Raven offense that is actually one of the best in the NFL, if not the best in the NFL, because if Zay is not active, that is going to change the matchups. All of a sudden, Porter can take on Rashad Bateman. All of a sudden, the CB2 problem that the Steelers have may not be as noticeable against a guy like Nelson Aguilar. And the tight ends being the main focus of the Raven attack is actually something the Steelers can deal with their fast linebackers, right? Wilson, Queen, and then their safeties, Elliott and Minka. So I think that the Steelers actually match up really well here, including having a front seven that knows how to contain and keep Lamar in the pocket and force him to win from that pocket, not allowing him to buy time and ad-lib. And the Steelers do a great job of forcing the most mistakes of Lamar Jackson than any team in football. So I actually see this as more of a defensive game, but ultimately I can't trust the Steelers, especially on the road offensively, to make anything happen here. I think the Ravens defense comes through with a few sacks and big plays of their own. I love how Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey are playing in the back end, Roquan in the middle, and then Kyle Van Noy's been playing phenomenal this year, providing pressure. I think they stop the run of the Steelers. That should never be an issue. And I ultimately just feel like Lamar will make more plays than Russell Wilson. Even if Derrick Henry does not go off, there is a chance that happens. I think that Lamar will ultimately find his receivers for more big plays than Russell Wilson in their current form. So give me the Ravens, and I think maybe a slightly tougher game than many would expect, just because it's so familiar for these two teams. Next up, the number 4 and the number 5. We've got the Chargers as the 5, traveling to the Texans as the 4. This is, in my opinion, one of the trickier games to pick of Wildcard weekend, not only because it's a 4 versus a 5, but I keep replaying the Texans in my mind from last year when they absolutely demolished the Browns. And if you guys remember, the Texans were underdogs in that game. Now, the one thing I could say about the Texans is Stroud was playing much better last year. Their offense was humming, and currently that is not the case. But their defense is arguably better than the one that played last year for them. So they're at home. You always have to treat these 4 seeds with home field advantage in the playoffs as a serious threat. because that crowd noise and that environment in a playoff game is a different animal. The Chargers, though, have been peaking at the right time, playing great football at the right time. Defensively, they're very solid and they don't beat themselves. They force the other team, the offense, to matriculate the ball. They don't give up big plays. On the other side, Herbert's playing great football. He's throwing the ball with precision and accuracy. They got Dobbins back to run the ball, and all of a sudden, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Will Dissly, these weapons are coming together. I think Harbaugh has his team humming at the right time, and that's why I lean my pick towards Chargers. They're back. They're going to get a playoff win here. I really just think they're playing better football. They're playing more consistent football. And I think the key to the game is the line of scrimmage. And I think ultimately both teams have very good pass rushers, but I think the Chargers will be able to disrupt CJ Stroud more frequently. I think that defensively they won't allow Nico Collins to beat them. And I think that the Texans will have too many plays where Stroud is under duress, doesn't have an alternative option from Nico Collins, and I think Joe Mixon will have to be the key for the Texans to win this game. If they do win this game, I think Mixon has to run well, but I'm not sure that he will. On the other side, the great Texans edge rushers might be minimized by the great tackles of the Chargers to keep Herbert protected. Herbert's also great at getting the ball out and understanding how to beat pressure, and I think Ladd McConkey and the boys come through with some plays. So I think the Chargers probably win a sluggish game in the AFC, but I think they take their talents to Kansas City in the divisional round. So let's move to the divisional round, beginning with the Chargers as the 5 seed, taking on the Chiefs as the number 1 seed once again in the AFC. The Chiefs will be rested and they'll have 20 plus days of rest entering this game, which might be good, but might also be a bad thing. Patrick Mahomes is playing the best ball of his season, and the offense seems to be playing the best overall recently. Moving Joe Thuney to left tackle was a huge critical deal. Travis Kelce in the playoffs is always a real thing, and I love how Worthy's playing. D-Hop is there. Marquise Brown, Hollywood is settling in. So the Chiefs, it's going to be intriguing to see how the Chargers look to slow them down. Obviously, this is a Chargers defense that does have good edge rushers that can give the Chiefs a bit of trouble with Khalil Mack and with also Joey Bosa. Derwin James, he is also somebody that can match up on Kelce and really minimize his talents. So it'll come down to the receivers of the Chiefs and the corners of the Chargers. I think Andy Reid, with time to prepare, is always a dangerous animal. Patrick Mahomes and his ability to beat zone coverage is always a much more dangerous animal. And I think the Chiefs probably won't score 30 in this game, as they haven't done that in I don't know how long, but I think they'll be able to matriculate the ball through a quick, short, precise passing game and be able to control the clock and the game and the pace that way. On the other side of the ball, I think the Chargers will be able to find a bit of success because Herbert is just that good within the pocket and he can make a lot of explosive plays, especially if Quentin Johnston in this game is actually catching the ball. That could be a big deal. Ladd McConkey did not play in their recent outing, and the Chargers nearly won that game to my surprise, and they very well could have won that game. So they have experience playing the Chiefs. They played them twice this year. I don't see this game being a blowout because of that. I think Harbaugh and Reid will play this game close. The Chiefs always play games close. I think the Chargers will keep this one close. They've got a solid defense, a good offensive line, and they have a great quarterback. But I just don't think the Chargers have enough depth of talent at wide receiver or weaponry to go into Kansas City in a loud stadium and be able to win the game. I just think they'll make slightly less big plays. I think that the Chiefs will just have a little bit more control, a little bit more function and rhythm on third down, and I think that will provide the difference in this game. So I think it will be tight, but I think the Chiefs ultimately will win the game. And then the other AFC divisional matchup, which might be like the X factor matchup of the entire playoffs. I think most people assume this will be the matchup in the divisional round, the number 2 Bills hosting the number 3 Ravens. And I recently made a video where I claimed that the Ravens were the worst matchup for the Buffalo Bills. But in that video, I also said that if this matchup happens in Buffalo and weather is involved, that could tip the scales back to Josh Allen's favor. And at this time of the year, any weather is possible in Buffalo. It will be freezing at the very least. It could have wind. It could have snow. We've seen a playoff game in Buffalo between these two teams before. That was one of Lamar's worst games I've ever seen him play. And I just think that the Bills are going to win in that environment. If this game was in Baltimore, I would heavily consider the Ravens. But I think the home field is actually the difference in this game between the fans of the Bills Mafia and between Josh's ability to play in any element, running and throwing the ball, and being the one with the bigger set of hands, the bigger body, the bigger frame, the guy that can take the contact in that cold, the guy that can keep composure in that cold. I think that's going to be a critical factor. I also view McDermott making adjustments and the Bills in general making adjustments against both the Ravens offensively and what they saw in the first matchup, because they were stunned, they were buzzed. The Bills were injured in that game, but I do think they come back and they play a complete game. I think that Josh will be much better throwing the football to a plethora of targets and receivers. I think that the defense of the Bills might give up some ground game to Derrick Henry, but I think that sluggish nature of Lamar in the drop back passing game will come back to bite them in this weather condition. So I feel like the Bills will win this game, probably kind of ugly, like a 24-17, but I will lean towards the Bills. Two awesome teams. This game could go either way, but I'm going to go with the home team and the number 2 seed to survive and move on to Kansas City, ultimately providing our only second AFC championship between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Now, that being said, they've played multiple times in the playoffs, but this would only be the second AFC championship game. Last year, they played in Buffalo, and this year, they'll play in Kansas City. Now, quickly going back to last year's game, Buffalo was maybe favored by a point or two. It was very marginal, and I think what we overlooked last year was how injured the Bills were. Defensively, they had a ton of injuries. And I think that really hurt them because they really couldn't stop the Chiefs in any big moment or any big play. The Bills are a much healthier team now. Kansas City is also, strangely, for a team that's gone back-to-back, extremely healthy. They maybe have one big critical injury in Rashee Rice, but they did replace him with DeAndre Hopkins. Other than that, they pretty much added pieces to their team overall. So these two teams are much healthier than last time we saw them, especially the Bills. In the regular season, the Bills played at home, and I thought demolished the Chiefs. I didn't think the game was all that close, and I thought Josh Allen provided a statement for why he should be the league's MVP this year. And the Bills have overall dominated the regular season series, but have not found their way of winning the postseason games. A lot of that has come down to coaching. A lot of that has come down to Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid versus Sean McDermott and whoever the OC has been for the Buffalo Bills. I think that the Bills are the team that can beat the Chiefs. They are made and really constructed to beat the Chiefs. And I think ultimately the area of difference for me with the Bills, where I think they're better than the Chiefs, I think they have a better, more explosive running game. And I think that because part of it is because of Allen, but also I think they have a more explosive offense in general. They can create more chunk plays. And in a game where both defenses will be calculated and they're very familiar with the opposing offense and offensive scheme, it's very hard at this point for the Chiefs to shock McDermott or to shock the Bills defense or for Josh Allen and the Bills to shock Spagnuolo and the Chiefs defense. They know what's coming. But I think the difference will be the Bills' plethora and depth of weaponry. No longer do the Chiefs have L'Jarius Sneed. They did last year. And I feel like when the Chiefs defense has played their worst, including against Buffalo, they've shown that weakness of depth in the secondary. And I think that ability to have 3, 4, 5 receivers, including tight ends who are going to be very dangerous against the Chiefs because they've been bad against that position all year, and running backs that can catch the football, I think it's a really tough matchup for the Chiefs defense because it's hard to blitz Josh Allen, which is something Spagnuolo likes to lean on. It's hard for them to stop the pass and the run and the ad-lib of Josh Allen. And I think the Bills are just going to be able to move the ball and create explosives more frequently than Kansas City, while Kansas City will have to matriculate the ball down the field 3 yards at a time, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, 4 yards, 7 yards, 8 yards. They don't create a lot of chunks outside of the yak ability. The deep ball for Mahomes has been bad. The O-line has been spotty, and I think that will catch up to them here. I also feel like the Bills will just, because of that defensively, be able to get stops in the red zone. Well, I don't think that's going to be the case for the Chiefs because Josh Allen is really, really hard to stop in the red zone. So I think the Bills are ultimately this year the better team. I think this is their year. I think they proved that in the regular season, and I think they'll do it again in the postseason. I understand why somebody would take the Chiefs because of history, but history is meant to be broken and changed and altered, and I think this time it's Josh's time, so I'm going to take the Bills to advance to the Super Bowl. Now, let's get to the NFC. On the NFC side of things, I view the playoffs a little bit differently than the AFC. In the AFC, I see 3 teams that can go all the way and win the Super Bowl. In the NFC, I think there's been 2 teams that have stood above the rest for the entire season, but I also view a lot more randomness that could take place in this conference because of the inconsistencies of almost every team within this conference. I think that there's a lack of superstar quarterback talent. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in this playoff race here and playoff mix, but not a lot of Hall of Famers, not a lot of superstars. And I think that opens the door for a little bit more inconsistency. I also view this as, is this the Lions' year? Or are the Lions too beat up to get it done? Should we believe in the Vikings? Are the Eagles really the most balanced team in this conference? Right? And you can't count out the dark horse of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it's a really interesting conference. Let's get to our predictions. And guys, don't forget to comment yours in the comment section below. Starting with the number 2 Philadelphia Eagles hosting the number 7 Green Bay Packers. I have been high on both of these teams from the offseason, during the season, until now. I see a clear difference between the teams now, though. And I have finally opened my eyes to the play of the Green Bay Packers. I think the Packers are a bit deceiving. And I still feel like the Packers are a little bit overrated because of what we think about when we think about their best level of play and we think about last year. And I don't feel like this Packers team is quite playing at the level that they were playing at last playoffs and entering the playoffs, where they were a true dark horse and a hot football team. Right? They didn't play very well against the Bears entering the playoffs. They lost to Minnesota in a game that many thought they would win. And I view this as a beat-up team. Alexander, their number 1 corner, Christian Watson, their most dangerous receiver. Those 2 players that would be huge in this game, covering A.J. Brown and being able to separate from those corners of the Eagles and providing explosives, those are 2 critical players that they will not have. And that's going to change the mathematics of this matchup against a team as talented as the Philadelphia Eagles, including a game that's in Philadelphia, where Philadelphia has been extremely hard to beat in recent years in the playoffs. I think back to their Super Bowl runs, one that they lost, one that they won, going through Philadelphia and being extremely difficult to beat in that stadium. And both quarterbacks, I feel like, are talented. Both quarterbacks provide something a little bit different, but both quarterbacks have their own inconsistencies and, I would say, randomness to their game. Love can be erratic throwing the football at times and make a bad decision. Jalen Hurts, he can make his own bad decision, and half the time he's a little blind throwing the ball over the middle of the field, but he's a great athlete. And both of them have playoff experience, but Hurts does have more big game exposure. Defensively, the Packers do grade well, but it doesn't match the eye test. They're good against the run, which will help against Saquon Barkley for sure, but their pass rush has been underwhelming. And I could see Jalen Hurts eating up this secondary with the tons of time that I think he will have in this game. I think the Eagles' offensive line will provide tons of time for Hurts to see the field and find targets. I think A.J. Brown is going to be extremely difficult to cover because no Alexander. They don't have a corner to match up with him. They don't have a corner to match up with Devontae Smith. I think the Packers are going to have to heavily lean into the odd blitz on third down and a lot of zone coverage. And I think the Eagles are just due to run on anybody. Like, Saquon's going to break big gains. This was a rematch of the Brazil game in week 1. I'm kind of throwing that one out because it was in a random country on a random field that was really not good or quality football. And I'm also saying, okay, week 1, that was so long ago. We didn't really know who these teams were. But now that we know that the Eagles are complete, now that we know that they can run it, that they can play defense, that they are at home, that they have the better O-line in terms of, I think they're going to have more time. The Eagles, I think will get a little bit more pressure in this game. As good as the Packers are on the offensive line, I think you can get after them, especially on the road. And without those receivers being complete for the Packers, without Christian Watson, I think these Eagles corners can get a little aggressive, play some feisty man coverage, and kind of make Jordan Love hold the ball a little bit longer than he wants to. I also think that Jacobs should have success, but I don't see him going crazy. So I think the Eagles are the better, more complete team. They're the home team. And I just feel like with the losses that the Packers have had, with the fact that they've barely beaten any good quality teams this year, I think the Eagles at home should be able to win this game. I'm not calling for a blowout, although I wouldn't be shocked by it. But I do feel like Matt LaFleur is too good of a coach here to really have a blowout. But I do think that this should be an Eagles victory at home to start the wild card matchups. Now, the next wild card matchup in the NFC is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home as the number 3 seed versus the Washington Commanders as the number 6 seed. I am genuinely shocked that the Bucs ended up as the 3 seed after what we saw from them in the mid-season point, and Atlanta choked the division away as they typically do. And, the Commanders finishing as the 6 seed, a team that I never saw coming this year, and I have to admit, I never saw it coming. But they finished ahead of the Packers. That felt very odd to me as well. So these two teams are a couple oddities, let's just say. But I have a lot of love for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you guys know that. I'm a huge Bucs fan. I have been, since Tom Brady was there. And I followed this Baker Mayfield team with many of the same talents that had exposure to winning the Super Bowl and going deep in the playoffs back-to-back years with Tom Brady. Last year, they shocked the world and smoked the Eagles, and then they almost nearly upset the Lions in their building. And what I've seen from Baker Mayfield this year, I just cannot deny it. I cannot sit back and claim that they're going to lose this game. It's at home. Baker has been absolutely unbelievable in third down and big spots this year. He has just been so clutch. And yes, Jaden Daniels has been so clutch as well. So this very well could be a very exciting game that goes down to the wire, and the fourth quarter could be thrilling. This game also is one that I would not benefit by, recording this on a Tuesday night. I don't exactly benefit from having, or a Tuesday morning technically here, but I don't benefit from the injury report is where I'm trying to go with this. I think the Bucs have a lot of injuries that could definitely sway this game, especially defensively in the secondary. But my lean is the Bucs. I will take the Bucs because I trust a lot of their players. I trust them in big games. I trust Baker. I trust Mike Evans. I trust Tristan Wirfs. I trust Antoine Winfield. I trust Levante David. I trust Vita Vea. I trust these boys, okay? I know how they play in these moments, and the Commanders are a little bit immature, right? At the quarterback position, the coaching staff, all that sort of stuff. Now, Dan Quinn has playoff experience, but he's going to have to make everybody, Bobby Wagner's going to have to carry these guys up and lift their energy. Right? I think a key ingredient to this game will be Bucky Irving. I think Bucky Irving running the football against a very underwhelming run defense for the Commanders is going to be able to open things up for the passing game of the Bucs. And the way that Baker's been finding his targets, his tight ends, his receivers, McMillan has really been exposed as a really good player and a really good talent at the end of this regular season. And I think defensively, Todd Bowles is a coach that knows how to defend these mobile quarterbacks. He knows how to pressure them. The Bucs did beat the Commanders in week 1, although it's a little bit less reliable now because it's week 1 evidence, not week 16 evidence. But Todd Bowles is very good at confusing rookie quarterbacks, at getting after rookie quarterbacks, at defending mobile quarterbacks. And I think he'll have answers for this Cliff Kingsbury attack. So I like this matchup for the Bucs. I like the exposure of the Super Bowl experience, and I like the home field team. So I'm going to take Tampa Bay as the 3 seed to advance to the divisional round to take on, obviously, the Eagles. Now, the final wild card matchup is the Los Angeles Rams as the 4 at home versus the Minnesota Vikings in a rematch of a game that we saw this season. An upset by the Rams at home. Now, this is going to be a rematch of that exact same game. This one has myself, pulling my hair out of my head because I could see this going either way. And it's hard for me to remove the recency bias of watching Sam Darnold puke on himself on national television on the road in a big hostile game and a big game. And I'm taking the upset. I'm going to take the Rams. I don't know if this is like a huge upset, but I'm going to take the Rams because the Rams beat the Vikings already this year. That's first and foremost. Second, I don't trust Sam Darnold in this spot. I don't trust Sam Darnold against Matthew Stafford. I'm going with Matthew Stafford. I'm a Matthew Stafford guy. I always have been. Stafford has been clutch in the playoffs for the Rams. He played great last year in the game against the Lions. He was phenomenal in 2021's playoffs. Puka Nacua is going to go crazy against this defense. And I think it's actually a good matchup for the Rams. The Vikings are the better team objectively on paper. But when you talk about Flores and his style of defense and his scheme in terms of being a blitz-heavy scheme that likes to show a lot of different things at the line of scrimmage, lots of back-out guys, simulated looks, a lot of that sort of stuff, a lot of zone coverage. Stafford is probably one of the best quarterbacks in the league at dissecting that. He's great at understanding where the pressure is going to come from. He's great at getting the ball out. He's great at understanding where to go with the ball. And McVay always gives him great avenues and options to attack those type of defenses. We saw that in the first matchup. We've seen it with Stafford against Todd Bowles' teams, right? The teams that like to blitz and play zone and that sort of stuff. That is where Stafford is at his best. And then you combine that with the lasers that he's capable of throwing in the red zone or on third down or in 2-minute situations. And I think they have the edge there, on top of Kyren Williams also providing steady balance. On the other side of the football, the Rams defense has steadily been getting better, and their questionable unit has actually been their offense. But in the playoff setting, I trust Nacua, I trust Kupp, I trust Stafford, I trust McVay to find answers against the Vikings. On the other side, the Rams have been better, and I think their home field will lift them. I think the crowd will lift them. I think, more importantly, the Vikings being on the road will make them worse. We saw them on the road against the Lions. They were not a very good team. We've seen them on the road this year. They've just not been the same team, in my opinion, as they've been at home. They're a better team at home. So I think that matters. I think the Rams will be able to take a page out of the Lions playbook and blitz a lot because they've been effective doing so. And I do think they're one of the few teams that can get pressure on Darnold with even just 4 because of how dynamic the Rams pass rush has been. I'm a little bit worried about those receivers, especially if the Rams tend to play a lot more zone. But this could be a higher scoring game. And I'm going to take the home team. I'm going to take the home field advantage. I'm going to take the veteran quarterback, the great coach. I'm going to take the Rams in the slight upset. Now, the divisional round. We have the Rams at the Detroit Lions. It's once again Matthew Stafford returning to Detroit, the prince that was promised, entering Detroit, right, to play Jared Goff and the man that they traded, the Rams traded. And I think this is another spot where Jared Goff, he's off the bye week. I think that Jared Goff beats Matthew Stafford again. I think that Jared Goff beats Sean McVay again, and he continues to poke at Sean McVay. You shouldn't have traded me. But that being said, I think the trade out worked fine for both teams. I honestly just think the Lions are the better team. I think the Lions are the better, more explosive team. They've been the more consistent team. They know who they are, and they're at home. And we've seen Detroit at home. I mean, this is a crazy, raucous atmosphere. The fans are crazy. You got Eminem out there probably, performing Lose Yourself at halftime or something. Dan Campbell's biting kneecaps. And I think that the Lions, their defense proved to me something against the Vikings, even with the injuries that they might or may not have in this game, the guys that might return or may not return. They're going to play their style of football. They're going to be very aggressive, and I think they can actually do that against the Rams a little bit. Now, blitzing is a difficult thing to do against Stafford, and covering Puka Nacua is a challenge. But I do think the Lions can slow down the Rams' running game, and I think they can get enough third down stops by being aggressive and forcing, Stafford to take a lot of hits and have to make a lot of money throws and a lot of tight window throws. Now, Stafford's certainly capable of doing that, but it's going to have to take a Herculean effort to be better than the Lions offense against a defense that likes to play a lot of zone, that, doesn't really have good matchups on the other side, that has slow linebackers, that I think is going to have problems with Sam Laporta, going to have problems with Jahmyr Gibbs, that's going to have problems with Amon-Ra in the middle of the field. I think Goff will be very comfortable. When you can block the Rams, you can throw on the Rams. I think Jared Goff should have a good game. So I think the Rams will just lose because they'll lose the line of scrimmage ultimately, and I think that's why the Lions win this game in advance. Next, the number 2 seed Philadelphia Eagles hosting the number 3 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this is a matchup that the Eagles, truthfully, probably do not want because they have not fared well against Todd Bowles' defense. They have not fared well against Baker Mayfield, and they have not fared well against the Bucs in recent playoff outings. Tom Brady or Baker Mayfield. But this game is being played in Philadelphia, not in Tampa Bay like the game in the regular season this year where the Bucs blew away the Eagles in the regular season. There were injuries for the Eagles that made that game a little bit slanted towards the Bucs. I would also say that the game in the playoffs, this is a totally different team. Now, I think, again, the Bucs injuries are going to be huge. I think that the Bucs defense is just hard to trust. On the road, against a more complete team, I feel like the evolution of this Eagles offense will handle the Bulls defense a little bit better than they did previously. I think they'll have more answers here to the blitz. I think they'll have more answers to running the football. I think they'll have more answers with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the perimeter. I think that will ultimately be the difference. The ability to throw to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and get the ball out. And Saquon also making plays as a receiver and yards after catch. But you look at the Bucs and on paper, they match up well with the Eagles. Like, they've got the big, strong, stout interior run defense. They've got the linebacker like Levante David to chase down Jalen Hurts. They have a blitz-heavy system, which Hurts has traditionally struggled with. And they have 2 corners in Dean and McCullum who are underrated and can match up a little bit with Brown and Devontae. So there are matchups there. And then on the other side, you got Mike Evans, who Darius Slay has historically covered and struggled with. The offensive line of the Bucs has been pretty good, and their run game has been even better than pretty good. And Baker is definitely probably been better, especially as a passer, than Hurts this year. But it's on the road, and you've got a dicey, inconsistent Bucs defense having to rely on them on the road. Against, on the other side, the offense of the Bucs is facing arguably the best defense in the league. So I just don't know if I trust the Bucs defense enough to get this done. I think that's ultimately their Achilles heel. They're going to have to blitz to get pressure. Maybe that's better against the Eagles, maybe not. But ultimately, I think Saquon takes control in the late second half. I think this defense of the Eagles plays really, really stout. And I think that they're able to do enough to win this game. Tight. Not a great matchup on paper, but just like the Bills and the Ravens, I'm going to take the home team in this matchup. And the NFC Championship is the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles. And out of all the games that I have to pick in this entire video, I think this is probably the most difficult one for me to pick. I think this is the game where I could switch this after I turn this recording off, to be honest. I've struggled with this a lot. I could see either of these teams winning. And I think ultimately a big difference will be Detroit's health. Who is available for them? Who's come back? Who is not? Is Carlton Davis available? That's a big difference maker. Is he not available? So those are things that I think are going to change potentially the matchup, and we'll have to see once we get there. But I do ultimately think this will be the matchup. I do think this is going to be the matchup, the 1 and the 2. And I know you guys are like, oh, the 1 and the 2 in both conferences. Wow, you're so exciting. Hey, these are predictions, okay? These aren't hot takes. If you wanted hot takes, go to Hot Take Hockey, all right? This is the bottom line view. So the NFC Championship, I think that when you have this many injuries, eventually it catches up to you. And it usually only catches up to you when you see a matchup that's difficult on paper. When you think about the Eagles, you've got a run game that you have to respect and you have to stop. You have 2 receivers that are going to beat man coverage. I don't have any questions that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are going to separate and make plays. Dallas Goedert will even be a problem. Saquon out of the backfield could be a problem, and having a mobile quarterback that can move is also an issue for a man coverage heavy defense. Now, Hurts has struggled a bit against the blitz, and I think the Lions with the home field crowd is definitely going to help on third down. But I think the Eagles' ability to move the line of scrimmage a little bit, to protect Hurts and pick up those blitzes, and to be able to find one-on-one matchups against man with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, that's going to be really tough. A really tough formula for the Lions to crack defensively with all the injuries they do have. On the other side of the ball, this is maybe the enigma, the unknown, the weird, what would happen in this scenario? The Eagles defense versus the Jared Goff-led Lions offense. Now, the one thing I do know is that Vic Fangio has had answers against Jared Goff before. And he's typically done very well against these Sean McVay style of offenses that Ben Johnson does kind of run. Now, I do think the Lions can block the Eagles better than most teams. I do think that they have got some challenging matchups with Amon-Ra in the slot, which is one of the areas you can attack the Eagles. But their linebackers have been much better. Their safeties have been much improved. Cooper DeJean has helped a lot in that nickel spot. And a guy like Quinyon Mitchell as well to cover Jamison Williams stride for stride with speed is also a game changer because both are extremely fast. And that could be a good matchup for the Eagles. So I think the Eagles are the more complete team in terms of, I think their defense is better. And I feel like the Eagles' offense is a challenging matchup for Detroit's style of defense. And that's why ultimately I'm going with the Eagles. I'm going with the road team. But I could certainly see the Lions winning. And to counter argument with the Lions, I think it would be because of coaching. I think it would be because of scheme. I think it would be because of timely play calling on offense, third down and fourth down. I think it would be because of timely defense on fourth down, third down, red zone from the Lions. I think that would be why the Lions would win is maybe they don't outplay the Eagles, kind of like how the Lions played the Niners, and the Niners kind of got outplayed, but the Niners made more big plays in the end. They made more critical stops in the end. That could be the deal if the Lions advance, and it very well feels like it is the Lions' year in the NFC, so I might regret this pick, but I'm going with the Eagles to advance to the Super Bowl just because I think they're healthier, and I think they're ultimately better. So I'm going to take Philadelphia to get to the dance. Now, in the dance, the Super Bowl 59, the Buffalo Bills are in the AFC representative, the AFC champs, versus the Philadelphia Eagles, that NFC representative, NFC champs. Jalen Hurts versus Josh Allen. This is the second out of the last 3 years, right, matchup for Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl. That should help Nick Sirianni and his team prepare for this game. He's got new coordinators, but Fangio, if I recall correctly, was also a member of that Eagles in one way, shape, or form there as a consultant. But this is Josh Allen's year. And I said it before, I'll say it again. I think this is the Bills' time. I think this is finally the season that they win a damn Super Bowl. I think they're finally going to say it, and we can finally let go of, boy, I love losing Super Bowls in terms of saying the Bills' letters out loud. And when you've got Josh Allen in a Super Bowl setting with 4 downs to work with, I don't care what your defense is. When he can run it, and he's going to play balls to the wall, and he's going to do anything. Throw the ball left-handed, right-handed, jump over you, run through you, throw the ball underhanded, right? Like, tush push. It doesn't really matter. I just think the Bills, as good as the Eagles' defense has been, in a neutral setting, without home field, in a dome, against Josh Allen, where the Bills have been so good offensively in domes this year, like the Rams game and the Lions game, for example, I think the Eagles are just going to see something, a Superman that they have not seen all year. And they've got, like I said, a better run game than they've ever had. I think they've got a more deep receiving core than they've ever had, and multiple ways, tight ends, running backs, receivers to throw the ball to. And then defensively is going to be a question for the Bills. I see this as a high-scoring game. I think you guys kind of understand. Kind of like the Chiefs and Eagles in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Very exciting. I think it would be very exciting and very high-scoring. But I think the Bills, in pass defense, they actually don't match up poorly with the Eagles. I think that Jalen Hurts could make some mistakes throwing against a lot of zone coverage of McDermott. I think McDermott being able to prepare for 2 weeks for an offense of Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts that is as simplistic and kind of talent-driven as this offense is could be a difference. I think, the Bills' D-line might struggle a bit with the Eagles running the ball. And that would be the way that the Eagles are able to dictate the game. But I think on timely third downs, the Bills would be able to come up with rather some creative coverages or a decent pass rush to be able to stifle this team. I also think McDermott has also been against Lamar. You know, we talked about mobile quarterbacks. I think that he would do a decent job against Jalen Hurts and that rushing attack as well. And I just kind of view this as like the Super Bowl from a couple years ago. If this game happens, I made the mistake of taking the better team over the better quarterback. And as well as Hurts played in that game a couple years ago, Mahomes made the timely throws and timely plays at the right time. And I feel like Josh would probably have to do more statistically, but I just feel like in this setting, I'm taking the quarterback. Like I'm taking the guy. And I think that's Josh Allen. So I'm going to take the Bills to win the Super Bowl. Exciting game. Let's call it 38-34 for the Buffalo Bills with a game-winning drive from the Buffalo Bills. Although it would be much funnier if Tyler Bass kicked the field goal. Maybe that would be better against the Chiefs. But that's going to be my prediction, guys, for Super Bowl 59 for the NFL playoffs 2025. It's Mitch. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you for the rest of the playoffs. Leave your predictions in the comment section below. Gronk, spike the like button and subscribe. Peace, guys.